So as we mentioned today, we are here to talk about meters. This webinar is Meters 101. We're going to be talking about unlocking predictive maintenance. This webinar is going to be hosted by myself. I'm Mary. I'm a customer success manager here at MaintainX, and my colleague Nick, who is our customer support manager here. So Nick, I'll give you the floor to introduce yourself for a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. So my name is Nick Sankar. I am the manager of customer support here at lovely MaintainX. This Meters 101 is a part of a series of multiple webinars that we've been having over the past couple of months, introducing many of the amazing features that we have in MaintainX, and of course Meters is one of my favorites. So looking forward to helping every and anyone with questions about Meters, and thanks again so much, Mary.
No problem at all. For those of you who don't know me, as I mentioned, I'm a customer success manager here. Essentially, my role is to make sure you guys are able to get the most value out of the system. So if I do work with you already, very happy to see you here today. If I don't, I'm looking forward to working with you in the future. So here's our agenda for the day. This is what we're going to be covering. We'll start out as normal with our introduction, and then we're going to digress from our usual webinar flow here. We're going to be talking a little bit about the evolution of maintenance models, which really goes hand in hand with meters. We'll then talk about using meters to enhance efficiency. We'll do a live demo. We'll talk about how you can get up and running with the features we've discussed, and then we'll have our live Q&A. So about MaintainX. Our mission is to transform the way frontline professionals manage the equipment and facilities that power our world. We are building for the long term, pushing innovation in mobile workflows, real-time analytics, and open APIs. And we are partnering with our customers. We have truly a world-class team, we're not biased, that develops and supports our product with industry expertise in manufacturing, facilities, and more. We always like to say, when you're here at MaintainX, you have your 3 prongs of support. You have your account manager, you have your support team, Nick's incredible team, and you've got your customer success team as well. So you're really well surrounded by experts in the field, here to help you with anything that we can. So let's do a little poll. I would love to know, are your maintenance operations mostly reactive, so putting out fires when they come up? Are they mostly preventive, so planned, we do this every 3 weeks, every 3 months, every year? Or are they predictive? Are we anticipating things ahead of the fact? I know often it tends to be a bit of a range, bit of a mix of a few, but what would be the bulk of your operations? We'll give you just a second to answer that. Okay. Nice. I'm seeing these answers build up in here, and they are looking as I anticipated, which is great news. Alrighty, Claudine, should we share those results? Perfect. So as anticipated here, the bulk of the responses show we're mainly reactive or mainly preventive. This, I would say, is in line with my experience with customers here at MaintainX. Nick, would you say it's the same for you and your team?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we do have 4% saying mainly predictive. That's incredible. Great, good for you guys. And a few people not sure. Don't worry, we're going to clarify all these terms in the coming minutes here. So thank you guys for sharing. Let's take a look at maintenance models. We're going to dive into those terms a little more. This is the evolution of maintenance models that we're seeing happen at the moment. So typically we start with reactive maintenance, where failure triggers a maintenance intervention. This allows assets to run to failure. And when I say asset, that can mean, sure, a production line or a piece of machinery. It could mean something small, like a fire extinguisher. It could mean, if you're in something like property management, an air conditioning unit. It could mean a boiler. It could mean really anything that you're doing work on. The point here is it has to go down for us to actually realize, okay, we need to do something. We need to go in and fix it. It's very much the firefighting approach. That's our baseline. That's where we start. If that's where the bulk of your operations are right now, that's great. We can build on that. That's our foundation. The next step is our preventive maintenance model. So maintenance prompted by the theoretical rate of failure. This would be your planned maintenance, your PMs. So we're really preventing problems before they manifest. We're saying, okay, typically I would expect if I don't do anything here, this is going to go down in 9 months' time. So in 8 months' time, I'm going to want to go in, inspect, check everything out, maybe replace a few parts that we would anticipate would burn out within that time, and stop it from actually failing. Advantage here, of course, we're going to be reducing our downtimes. Maybe a slight disadvantage, we may be over maintaining slightly, and we'll dig into that a little bit more later. The great thing about preventive, you have a little bit more control here in terms of your resource planning, in terms of getting in parts, in terms of just knowing what's going to happen and when, than you would over reactive, where we're really kind of flying wild. Next step from preventive would be a predictive maintenance model. So maintenance based on real-time data predicting failure in advance. And you may say, Mary, how am I going to do that? I cannot see into the future. I unfortunately have left my crystal ball at home. That is okay. That's what we're going to talk about today. The tools that would help you be able to predict when something will go wrong and fix that problem in advance. The advantage of a predictive maintenance model, of course, over reactive, again, we know what's happening in advance. The advantage over a preventive model is it could stop that over maintenance. So stop you over investing labor in something or over consuming on your parts because of a theoretical rate of failure. Theory is great, but it may sometimes be off. You may be replacing parts 2-3 months in advance. Wouldn't it be great if we can kind of economize there, save that, do things when they need to be done? Really, it's about efficiency. So here's some stats on what we've just been explaining, the advantages of predictive maintenance. If you don't want to take it from me, we can take it from the US Department of Energy instead. It helps eliminate breakdowns in 70 to 75% of cases. Typically delivers a 10 times return on investment. So for every dollar that you put into a predictive maintenance plan, you'll be seeing 10 theory come back on in. Downtime reductions of 35 to 45%. That's a very hefty statistic there, especially when we consider the amount of money in production losses, in whatever it may be that downtimes can cost us. That's really quite a big one there. And of course, a 20 to 25% increase in production. If you factor in both that increase in production and a downtime reduction, you do the math. It's looking pretty good there. I also found a couple of statistics to compare the different maintenance models. So if we look at comparing a predictive and preventive maintenance model, you can see 8 to 12% savings there on your maintenance. And if we look at the comparison with reactive maintenance plans, you're looking at savings of up to 40%. So again, don't take my word for it, listen to the numbers. So how does this tie in with meters? How can we enhance our efficiency here through meters? Great question. Let's start out nice and simple with some definitions. I'm aware, when people come into me asking a lot of questions about meters in MaintainX, there's a lot of, really technical knowledge and jargon and things, and it can really throw people off. First things first, I'd like to say a meter can be absolutely anything that you want to count. So it could be mileage, it could be hours, it could be temperature, it could be anything. Fun fact about us at MaintainX is that we make ourselves a fake account when we start working here to see, to get into the system and really learn it. My very first meter I ever created was how many donuts one of my colleagues ate in a day. The answer was 6. So, really any measure that you want, you could have a meter for, no problem at all. So what's a manual meter? This is where a meter is manually checked and a technician records the reading in MaintainX. So they would have a work order pop up saying, you need to go read this, they go read it, and they note it down. MaintainX will record it. That's typically the foundation. That's where we'll start with meters in MaintainX. You may also have heard quite a lot recently about IoT meters. So first things first, what is IoT? Stands for Internet of Things, which in our very fancy description here is the network of interconnected physical devices, objects, and sensors that can collect, exchange, and transmit data over the internet, enabling them to communicate and interact. That's a mouthful. Essentially, we're looking at pieces of equipment that talk to each other. They stop the need for you to be a middleman. They will record information and send it right on over to another device. Simple as that. So an IoT meter, therefore, is where the meter readings transfer automatically from point A to point B without you having to do so. You can set that at a predetermined interval. So you may want that to happen every minute, every 15 minutes, every hour. You're able to set up that cadence that one machine is asking the other for that information and then receiving it. So let's combine these two things we've talked about today, meters and maintenance models. Typically, when we're doing manual meter readings, we're looking at a reactive or a preventive model there. When we're getting more into predictive, that's when we're looking more at IoT. So I'll give you some examples here to kind of flesh this out a little bit. If we're looking at a preventive maintenance model, you may have your truck goes X far, you know you need an oil change. So you have it recorded in the system, for every X amount of hours this truck runs, I'm going to need to do an oil change. Or for every 10,000 kilometers it runs, it's going to need an oil change. You're kind of saying, this is the theory of how often we're going to need to do it. So when it's recorded that we go above this certain amount, we're going to trigger that work order to go in and make the change. When we're looking more at a predictive model, you could be thinking of things like vibration and temperature sensors. So those meter readings are coming through automatically, consistently to MaintainX. And as they come through, the system may notice an unusual increase in the vibration levels or in the temperature there. This could indicate a potential failure. It's going to generate a maintenance alert, giving you the access to have early intervention. With that early intervention, you can identify that faulty component and replace it before there's any real damage to the machine. So the advantage here is we're identifying the problem before it becomes a problem. That's where that predictive piece comes in. But we're waiting to receive that kind of faulty reading to know that we don't just need to do it, say, every 6 months. We don't need to do it at every theoretical interval. It's really based on that real-time data coming in from your machine. Again, saving on the cost of unplanned downtime and production losses and reducing your maintenance costs via use of overuse of PMs. So this, I think, is really where that return on investment statistic comes in. A lot that I hear from my customers when they're looking into getting IoT devices is, oh, it can be really expensive because we need to buy sensors. We may need to talk to MaintainX. We may need to talk to a third party to connect them or have our in-house developers connect the two. That's a lot of investment. Absolutely, it can be a bit of an upfront cost. However, when we then factor in that reduction in unplanned downtimes, the loss of production losses, production increase without a double negative. And when we factor in that reduction of maintenance costs, that's where we see that return on investment start to come through quite quickly. It's really helping you return, on those costs, and also really just kind of future-proofing ourselves. As more and more people get into more advanced models here, you really want to keep up with the trends. You want to keep at a baseline, stay with the industry. So how does this relate to MaintainX? What do you have available to you in your plan? Or if you are a prospective customer here, what's available to you in the plan that you are looking into? Great question. When we're looking at manual meter readings, that's something that's available within our premium plan. So if we're looking at that reactive preventive, we're looking within our premium plan. You can make your meters, record the readings, factor them into procedures, all things I'm going to be showing you in just a second. You can do that within premium. If you want to get more into IoT, definitely have a discussion with your account manager. That is an enterprise feature. Whether you have sensors already, whether you have contacts who can code you something, or whether you don't at all, no worries at all. If this is all seeming like a lot of information to kind of process when we get to IoT points, just reach out to your account manager, reach out to myself, reach out to support. We will discuss your specific needs and see what we can do there. But I cannot recommend enough. We have this flow, right, from reactive to preventive to predictive. It's step by step for a reason. We don't want to try run before we can walk. My recommended flow is always, let's start getting comfortable with manual meter readings, making meters in MaintainX, making the work orders, making the triggers, filling them in. And then as we're comfortable with that, we can begin the conversation and evaluate taking us up a step to IoT. IoT will always be kind of the end goal to unlock that predictive maintenance capability, but it's really important that we do so in a way that is accessible and that isn't really biting off more than we can chew right at the very beginning. We've spoken a lot, maybe some abstract terms there. Let's head into the system and I'll show you around meters. Again, a very familiar screen over here to most of you. If you're new to MaintainX, this is the work order screen. This is where you spend most of your time. But we're going to head over to the navigation bar on the left-hand side. and head right into meters. If you aren't seeing meters in this left-hand side, it's possible that the module isn't turned on. So to turn it on, you would just head down into your settings, go into features. We're going to scroll down here, and you can toggle the module off and on. So just make sure it's toggled to on, and we should be able to access it there. Oops, there we go. First things first, let's take a look at what a meter looks like. So this is one we have up and running already. My Ford F-250 odometer. What we can see here is any upcoming reading work orders. So any work orders where there is a field saying we need to capture this information. For example, let's take a look at this one. We see we have a work order here. In my procedure, I'm going to be recording an odometer reading. So we can see any upcoming work orders. We can see the last reading value, and we can see a reading history as well. To get the visual within the graph, you could go by week, month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. 1 year would be the max time frame that you're looking at there. If we want to go back further, if we want to see even more detail rather than just a visual, we can click on See All Readings and see not only the reading value, but the date, the time, and who it was recorded by as well. We can see the location, the asset the meter is tied to, and we can see our work order triggers as well. I'll dig into a little bit more information on meter triggers in just a second. So let's make ourselves a new meter. I want to put this as Mary's odometer. There we go. We can add in a picture if relevant. We can put in a description here, and we can choose our measurement units. So I am going to go into kilometers. I apologize to any Americans on the call. My brain does not function miles as hard as I make it. It's just going to be kilometers for me. And we can assign an asset right here as well. I'm going to say, there we go. You could assign a reading frequency, and also if you want to attach any files in here, you're able to do so. Really, any information that you think would be relevant, pop it in there. There's no harm in doing so. And we press create, and there we go. We've got the basics of a meter there. We're going to make 2 work orders from this. So firstly, as we saw with the other one, we're going to be making a meter reading work order. I'm going to click on here. I'm going to say here, find it to read odometer. Just like usual with a work order, I can put in a description. I can choose who to assign it to. This one's going to be myself. And I can set it a due date and schedule. So I'm going to say today, and I'm going to want this to be done daily, except for Sunday, because I do not work on Sundays. I'm going to set this to be a low priority. And just a side note here, when you are making work orders, I highly recommend high is saved just for downtimes. Medium, something's at risk of going down. Low, any repeating task. So this will be a low priority work order. And there we go. Now, every day this is going to pop up with a reminder to read this odometer. So I'm going to put in my value here. We're going to say we're at 1, 2, 3, 4. I can even add in a picture if I want to really prove I've got the right reading. I'm going to mark this as done as well. Let's head back into the meters tab. There you go. You can see I've got my first reading. I have my first data point there. That's great. So you now have this set up to be read, do a manual meter reading. That's all done. But how do we get the triggers? How do we know what we need to do? How do we then trigger our maintenance? That's the whole point. That's what we're doing down here in work order triggers. So I'm going to create a new work order trigger, and I'm going to say when my meter reading increases by, I'm going to say increases by here because I want that to keep recurring for every certain increase. However, if I just wanted it to go above or below or equal a certain value, you can do that as well. I'm going to say when we go above 1500, I would like to do a general inspection. You can add a procedure in here as well if there is a procedure that you would like to follow. I'll take this one just for argument's sake. I can choose who to assign it to. I'm going to assign that one to myself, and I'm also going to assign that to our mechanics. And I'm going to assign a priority as well. I could put in categories, vendors, anything you want that's going to really make this a full work order. And there we go. We have our trigger set. There is something up and hiding from you. The best way to take your meter readings is through a work order, because you get that reminder coming through, because it's going to pop up and tell you to do it. However, if you do want to do it manually, you can do that as well. Right up here, record reading. If we hit this, it'll tell you what the last reading was, and you can submit a meter reading at any time. So I'm going to set this to be 1505. There we go, second data point. Now, when I head into my work orders, you can see my general inspection has popped up. Because we passed that threshold, we passed 1500 kilometers, the system has noticed, okay, we've gone above that value, it's time to trigger this work order. Functions very much in the same way as a corrective action would. We hit the threshold, there we go, we get the work order. So now I know I need to put this in progress. I need to go through and work on this, put all my information in, and then mark this work order as done. I'm going to say, yeah. We're going to say, yeah, we're due for an oil change. Done, 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 done. And we're going to pass all these fields. Just whiz through. Sign it off. Oops, there we go. Not my real signature. And I'm going to date that as today. There we go. As easy as that. Hopefully, your maintenance tech spent a little bit more time reading the fields and going through it. But in theory, this is how the meter would trigger the work order to come through, and then we know what we have to do. So when we have an IoT sensor set up, how does this work? Well, as I mentioned, you can set it to feed through information at a specific cadence. So as opposed to having that work order be daily or even hourly, whatever you'd like it to be, or recording it manually, that information is coming through all the time. So it eliminates the need for this meter reading work order. It would be happening silently in the background, and anytime we hit the criteria that we have set as a work order trigger, the work order would be generated. So it's really just saving you a step there and then making sure that the actions come up as and when they need to. You'll notice with an IoT meter, of course, we've got pretty smooth lines in here as the frequency isn't as high as it would be with an IoT meter. Your data is getting a little bit more granular. You can get a few more insights in there as well. So it's definitely a very valuable thing to have. If, again, that's something that you're interested in setting up and you're thinking, how do we do this? Please come speak to us. We'd be more than happy to help. So we know now how to set up a meter kind of one by one. We know how to do a meter reading work order. We know how to do a trigger. Those are the key components of meters within MaintainX. With that, you should be just about good to go. One exciting thing before we get to how to get started that I really would like to highlight is we do have a new feature that is anomaly detection. This is AI powered. It is fantastic. So essentially, when you're going through a procedure or a work order, has a meter reading field in it, and you enter in the value, if that is outside the range that you normally enter for that field, the system will highlight it. It'll take a look at your past readings and calculate an expected range. If we live outside of it, it will flag that to you. You can then go in and correct it, say, oh, I put 5,500, I meant this to be 4,500. Or if that is the correct one, you can add in some more information and leave a picture as well. So really an added level of protection there. It's a really, really cool feature. Definitely recommend checking it out. I'm super excited about it. So let's talk getting started. Step one. Upload your meters. You can do this one by one as we did together, or you can also do it in bulk. If you would like to do it in bulk and have the spreadsheet format to do so, please reach out to our support team. They would be more than happy to help you with that. And when you've completed it with all your information, send it on back to them and they will upload it for you into the system. Step two, when your meters are in there, create and complete manual-based meter work orders. Get comfortable. If you aren't coming from an IoT kind of background, if you're coming from a pen and paper system, or if you've been using MaintainX so far and just beginning to explore meters, I cannot recommend enough. Get comfortable with manual meter readings while you reach out to your account manager to discuss getting more automation. That discussion, it may be a very quick discussion, it may take some time. They're going to help you look into the kind of sensors you have. They're going to look into how they can be connected to MaintainX. They can connect you with some of our partners if you need, like Machine Metrics, Industry Core. We have a bunch of wonderful partners who are very, very helpful on the IoT front. And we would be happy to facilitate a discussion there and get you the steps you need to get fully automated. But before we do that, get comfortable with manual meter-based maintenance. Having that reminder every day, I need to go check this, I need to do this. It not only sets that habit, but beyond that, it makes sure that you've set the triggers at good thresholds. Because sometimes, you may have a trigger that you think is very accurate. And as we're actually putting in the manual meter-based readings, we notice they're a bit off. We're getting way too many corrective things through. We might want to adjust that slightly. Rather you find that out when we're doing it manually, as opposed to when we have meter readings coming through very, very frequently. Again, we crawl, we walk, and then we run. But make sure that if this is something that interests you, you reach out to support, you reach out to myself, reach out to your account manager, and we will evaluate your specific needs and see how we can get you to the end goal. Bit of housekeeping here. We have a very exciting upcoming event. We have our office hours on Tuesday. Nick and I are so excited to be hosting this again. The last one was a lot of fun. You guys sent some really challenging questions in that one. I was thinking on my feet. We will be there ready to answer your questions on learning best practices and tips for using MaintainX, accessing new features and product enhancements, and also just getting the most out of your MaintainX platform. So you will have been sent an email about this. There's a place you can submit questions there. I really recommend submit any questions. Nothing is too silly. Nothing at all. Send us anything over. And also nothing is too complex. Even if you have a very deep diving question that's very niche to your use case, send it over to us. We have an hour. We're going to do our best to get through everyone's questions. Speaking of questions, do we have any questions? Nick, I'll let you throw some things at me here.
Absolutely fantastic. And again, great job, Mary. I mean, the meter session was just very informative. I actually learned some stuff myself. So
I'm glad.
I'm always learning. I'm always learning. So we did receive a slew of questions from the chat, and again, I wanted to start with a few. So the first one actually that really piqued my interest as well too is I need to create a meter tracking minutes for an asset. Can we add custom metrics to a meter?
Yeah, absolutely. Like measurement units. Let me hop back over here. So when we're making a meter here, you see where we say measurement unit? Now, there are ones that you can select here that are kind of pre-programmed, but you could write anything in here at all. Say minutes, you put use minutes. You could say, is there anything in it? Birds. There we go. Use birds. That's my measurement unit now. So anything you would like, pop them in there, press use, and it will put that through for you. So there is nothing that you can't use.
Amazing. Yeah. So there's so another question that came up was, can we edit older readings, older meter readings?
Yeah, good point. Maybe something's been input incorrectly. We want to go back and change it. Absolutely. So let's head to the meter, go to see all readings. I'm going to click into this one that I recorded just now. We're going to go to the 3 dots in the top right, click on edit, and I'm going to change this. It should have been 59. There we go.
Oh, beautiful. Next question is, can we use the meter readings to trigger corrective action?
So this is an interesting question. The answer is yes. In theory, you shouldn't need a meter reading to trigger a corrective action because the triggers that you can set within a meter kind of function as corrective actions. They're telling you to go in and then do something, to fix something, to correct something. And you can have multiple triggers within here. However, if you specifically want a meter reading to trigger a corrective action, there's no reason that you can't do that through conditional fields within procedures. So if we head into procedure, let's make a new procedure in here. I'll just call it example. There we go. And we have a meter reading field. So let's say we want to use this one. Oh, would help if I turned on conditional logic in this account. What we can do is, as a result of that meter reading, we can have the field generate something else. So I'm just going to turn on this module in the back end. There we go, and refresh. Doesn't want to turn on for me for some reason. How strange is that? Well, what we could do in theory here is have the field where we would say, okay, we are going to have a meter reading right here. And there we go. We have our meter reading. You see this little node right here? This is a conditional field. So we could say if this reading is higher than a certain amount, so say if we went above 7,500 there, you could put in a different field here, which would be, for example, inspection check. You could say further action needed. And then this would trigger a corrective action. So based on this meter reading, we could pop up the inspection check field, which if then failed could trigger a corrective action. So if we specifically want a corrective action, yes, in theory.
Sounds
Next
perfect.
question, that was a good one.
Next question is, if we have meter readings that needs to be imported, does the system offer bulk inputs?
Absolutely. So that's what I'm meaning when I say you can reach out to our support team. I can even pull that up for you just to show you now. There we go. So we have an import workbook that I can absolutely send over to you guys. And in here you see you have your meter name, measurement unit, the asset it's related to, its location, reading frequency, type. So if you want to fill this out in bulk, if you have everything written down, absolutely populate this, send it on back to us, and we will pull them all in for you in one go.
Beautiful stuff. Next question. If we have secondary meters that are dependent on readings added to other meters for the same asset, would there be a way to hide the secondary meters?
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar logic to what we did here. So if we have our meter reading field within a procedure, it can be attached to a work order. With our conditional logic, you could have this generate then another meter reading. So let's say again, if I hide this could be a meter reading field. And what that means is if we didn't fit this condition, this second meter reading wouldn't show up. But if we do fit this condition, then the next meter and the next one and the next one will pop up. So you have a lot of discretion as to what people will be able to see in a work order. And it would only be if we hit certain thresholds that this next one would pop up. So it's a nice way of keeping things kind of tidy and only showing the information that needs to be shown.
Amazing. Next question. How do I unlock meters?
How do you unlock meters? Brilliant. So could be two ways in which this question is taken. So you may not have them available on your plan. If you're on Essential, they are a premium feature. So reach out to support your account manager and they'll evaluate that with you. However, if you are on premium already and you're not seeing it right there, head into your settings, head into features. We're going to discard changes on that. And if you scroll down, you'll see the meters module right here. You can toggle it off and on. If you're not sure what plan you're on, try come in here and toggle it on anyway. And if you're on Essential, it will pop up saying it's a premium feature and indicate to speak to your account manager.
Amazing. That question. Can I send preventative maintenance requests to users that only has requested permissions?
So requesters can only request work to be done. They can't fill it in themselves. So they would only be able to request that something be done. You wouldn't be able to say, have a request user who you want to go in and do a job or read a meter because they can't edit any work orders. They can only see the request that they've submitted.
Amazing. So in terms of meters, are there setup fees? And if so, what are they?
Again, good question. In terms of having the meters module on MaintainX, no, there's no additional fee for that. It's within the package that you have, whether it's premium or whether it's enterprise. If you're thinking more of, the actual hardware itself, that's not something that comes directly from MaintainX. So a couple of different things. If you already have different sensors that you're using, reach out to us and we'll see if a connection can be made. that itself would be an additional cost, something that we can dig into in more depth. It's going to vary depending on exactly what you need. If you don't have any sensors and you need the hardware to get more into, things like IoT meters, same thing, reach on out to us. We can connect you with partners who do both the hardware and then the connection to make, your sensors and MaintainX talk to each other, and they can come up with a scope of work and a quote for you on that as well.
Perfect. Next question was, can you show how we can set up multiple milestones on a meter to trigger a work order?
So I'm thinking kind of having different points through each where different things need to happen. So multiple triggers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Here we go. So let's head into meters here. And I think this is a great example of what we see here. So yeah, you can see we have different triggers here on this meter. We have an increase of 1,000, an increase of 10,000, an increase of 5,000. Each of these is going to trigger a different work order and a different activity to come through. So you can get quite specific with these. A lot of people like to do it with increases because then they keep recurring as opposed to just when it goes above a certain value or below a certain value. But if you had, kind of that thing, you absolutely could do that as well. You just come in here and say, when we're above 5,000 miles, this happens. Then make another trigger. When it's above 7,500, this happens. You can have as many triggers as you like. It's exactly the same workflow as we had before. You just click on make a new trigger, set your condition, and fill in your work order fields right in here. So like I say, you can get really creative with those and see what you want to happen. I recommend going in there, having a play around with triggers, but you can have multiple, so shouldn't be a problem.
Perfect. Next question. If meter readings are editable, would it not be a risk? Would it not be a risk of being tampered? And if is there a way of tracking the history recorded?
Good question. It's true. These things, you could go back and have things changed there. So I can see why you may want to, for example, restrict certain users from being able to go back in and change a meter reading. We do have custom permissions that may help here. That is an enterprise feature. If you are on the enterprise plan, definitely reach out and we can chat about that. There are specific ones for being able to edit a meter reading. So if you wanted to turn that off, you could do so. If you're on our premium plan, there's not so much that discretion. In terms of seeing the history of changes though, I'm actually not 100% sure. Nick, can you help me out on that one?
Sorry, Mary?
Editing previous meter reading work orders, can you see the edits that have been made?
Like I guess in terms of historical, you can just change it, but in terms of changing and understanding the history, you can see that with the actual meter. If it was changed, you see the original date, but then you see it was edited as of recent. But I think in terms of the historical, you can just see it from the graphs.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
You're very welcome. Next question. Is it advisable to have many triggers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really depends on what you're doing. You want to make sure that you don't over trigger, right? You want to make sure we're not too trigger happy. We don't have too many meter triggers in there, but there are so many uses where it would be helpful to have multiple. I mean, maybe you do different things at different intervals for the same piece of equipment. So that would be why you would want multiple. Absolutely. It's kind of take it with a pinch of salt. It's hard to define. Yes, having multiple is helpful. And yes, sometimes it can get cluttered if there's too many. So just try be discerning as to what actually requires a trigger, and then you should be good to go.
Perfect. Next question. Could you show how to see the IDs of the meters?
To see meter IDs?
Yeah.
If we head into our meter, where does it live? Oh, there we go. Head into your list view, and you've got an ID column right there. For those who don't know, for those who haven't been on these webinars before, the list view in anything in MaintainX is absolutely my favorite, because you can see a lot more information than you might be able to just from the regular kind of task view. And you can change the fields that you have in here as well. So if there's further information that you'd like to see, that in unit, you can see that in there as well. But yeah, if you wanted to see your meter IDs, click into this list view right here, and there they are.
I think that's, oh, so is there a way to trigger a work order if an IoT meter fails to report?
Very good question. I'm not 100% certain. We can check that out and get back to you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Do we have a note of who requested that question?
Yeah, that was Joe from Joe Swift.
Great question. I want to know the answer to that, so we'll check that out and let you know.
Beautiful.
Perfect. Have our wonderful support team managed to answer the chat questions, everything through?
Yeah.
Oh, we're on fire today. Brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, don't forget to join us for office hours, Tuesday, August 29th. We're going to be here at 10 a.m. Pacific, 12 Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. And like I say, we'll be here to answer your questions live. So feel free to submit those or to come prepared to that session with your questions. Or even if you just want to see everyone else's questions and use case, more than welcome to join us. But thanks once again for joining us today. I hope this was informative. There'll be a little review for you to finish after we get off this call. So let us know your feedback. We're always happy to improve how we can. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you again so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.